Welcome back to Worlds Adrift. My name is Kevin, and this is the third episode in the Worlds Adrift tutorial series. And today we're going to be covering a few topics, including the navigation and controls, so some general stuff, grappling mechanics. We're going to talk about running, walking, jumping, climbing. We'll discuss the salvaging, repairing, and scanning tools. And we'll talk about the gun, the pistol, how to shoot that, and then we'll also talk about respawning. And actually, respawning is what I want to talk about first. Because that seems to be something that maybe confuses people at first, and considering that you're likely to die almost immediately, I think we should cover that. So the way that you want to handle respawning, basically you have three different options, and so I'm going to go ahead and select the option here to show you. So the first one is your personal reviver, which is a personal reviver that you craft and you place on your ship. We don't have that yet since we haven't built a ship, so obviously that's going to be grayed out. And you'd see a timer here for 10 seconds normally, but it's not there. But personal reviver will always be 10 seconds. Then you have the nearby revival chamber, which will spawn us at the nearest revival chamber, which would be the one we just came out of. And this one has an incremental timer. So the more you die, the higher the timer. And the max timer is 2 minutes, and the minimum is 10 seconds. And then the last option here is your random revival chamber option. And just as the name indicates, basically it respawns us at a random revival chamber. I've tested this out a few times, and I've found out that you can actually respawn at the same revival chamber that you were just in. So it is truly random. It does put you on... The likelihood of it putting you on a different island is really good, though. So chances are if you need to escape some griefer or something... somebody that's like camping the spawners and killing you, this is a good option to hopefully randomly escape to a different island. This only has 2 uses though. It says N uses. That's glitched. That's a visual bug. You only have two chances to use this every 12 hours. So you do have to be careful with that. But it is an option. Another thing to note is that both the nearby revival chamber and random revival chamber options, both of them will unregister you from a personal reviver if you have one. So you don't want to use these 2 options if you don't want to lose the connection to your ship that you might have. So these are typically like kind of last resort options that you have. We're going to go ahead and randomly revive, and hopefully we'll respawn somewhere good. Now, this is the warning that you get, and this will send you to a completely random island in your zone and will unregister you from your personal reviver. Only use as a last resort. Really quickly, I did forget to mention that this random revival chamber is going to be in the same zone that you are in, but on a different random island. So what that means is, and we'll talk about zones later on in a different episode, but zones, in a nutshell, are basically quadrants or sectors, if you will, that are walled off. They're like enclosed by weather walls. And so you might have a zone that has wind walls or storm walls or sand walls, and all of that is basically just a gauge to see how you can cross into a higher tier. Again, we're not going to talk about zones too much in this episode, but we will cover that in a later episode. But all you need to know is that no matter what zone you're in, the random revival chamber option will always respawn you in the same zone that you're in, assuming that that zone has revival chambers. Tier 4 does not have any revival chambers in it. Again, we'll talk about zones in a different episode, but that's the nutshell here. So let's go ahead and revive. And so for the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to show you guys here that we can random revive one more time. There's only 1 use remaining. And after that, we're going to have a 12-hour countdown timer on it. We won't be able to use it for another 12 hours. So here we are. I can try to show you here again. See now, for nearby revival chamber, because I've died a few times recently, it's going to be a minute. And then, of course, random revival chamber here is 12 hours. And so, again, you're going to use this at a... just be careful when you use these. You just have to be very sparingly using these in last resort situations. Like I said, they're not really something that you can spam that much. really quickly, we talked about dad level in the previous episode, and that's the distance, or the detail at distance. And I can show you that real quick here. So if we look at these trees in the distance here, we can modify our dad level. We can reduce it, and you start to see that the trees start to lose some of their detail here in the distance. And as we put that back up, we can see that they get that detail back. This is really important because, for example, see those trees in the distance? You can see there's some rocks over here and some little details. If we reduce, let me aim that here. Okay, so if we reduce the dad level, you're going to see some of those assets start to disappear completely. And so, of course, this is going to help you with performance if you're not running a powerful system. But it does give you, I mean, it's a disadvantage because you're not going to be able to see a lot of these things at a very far distance. And this affects ships as well. So if you see a ship very far off in the distance, if you have a high dad level, you're going to be able to see the cannons, the sails, the helm, whatever that ship has on it, you'll be able to see it. So in my honest opinion, I recommend that if you can, keep this at max. Try to gain your FPS from somewhere else if you have to reduce settings, but if you can, keep this at the top. That's my honest recommendation for that. All right, and we're just about ready to revive here at this nearby revival chamber, so let's go ahead and do that. And let's talk about some of the controls that some general controls I want to cover before we leave this area. So as you can see here, you have your movement. You can move forward, backwards, left, and right with WASD. It's typical in most games. You can jump with spacebar, walk with left alt. Sprinting is by default left shift. And then rope reel in is also by default left shift. Rope reel out is by default left control. And then grabbing is actually, it's not grabbing, it's actually climbing. And that by default is Q. And so I've changed some of these obviously just because these are more ergonomic for me, but you can also modify any of these keys as you'd like. A quick tip though, I have W for move forwards and W also set to sprint. And so what this does is that basically when I move forward and hold W, I can also sprint at the same time, you see? And so what this does, it just makes it a lot easier, and to me, it's a lot more ergonomic. I don't have to press two keys to basically move forward quickly. So I recommend doing that if you don't want to keep pressing left shift the entire time that you're trying to run. It's basically kind of like a semi-auto run, if you will. Okay, moving down, we have interactions here. We can use our left hand with mouse with a left click, and then use our right hand with the right click. And so just to quickly demonstrate that, let's say I have this salvage tool attached to my left hand. I can left click, and then I can start to use that tool with my left hand. And likewise, my right hand will always have the grapple, so that'll always be grappling. And then you can initiate the grapple with the right click and then release to shoot the grapple. We'll talk about grappling a lot more specifically in just a moment, as soon as we get through these other controls. We have interact, which is basically opening chests, taking control of a helm, different things. Just interacting with everything is going to be E. Utility head, utility, and utility feet are referring to 3 different items that you can equip to yourself. You can activate those by pressing T, spacebar, and Y by default. And so what that is, I'll show you real quick. Right here, these 3 items under gear is what it's referring to. So this top one will be T, this middle one will be spacebar, this bottom one will be Y. And so there's only 3 items that fit into these 3 slots. So only one item fits into the top slot, which is the headlamp. Only the glider fits into the middle slot here, and then only the hip lamp fits into the bottom slider here. I'm sure that they're probably going to add more items later on in the game, but right now those are the only 3 utility items that we have available. Ship movement. This is it's a lot more complicated than it looks, I think. Especially for new players, it's kind of confusing. It's how to fly ships. So I'm going to dedicate a whole video to that entirely. But again, you can change these controls in the menu here if you once you're familiar with it. The inventory is again just the hot bar down here. You have 1 through 8. It's pretty straightforward. And then there are some miscellaneous controls here. It doesn't tell you how to dance, which is another what I would call miscellaneous control, but I'll cover that as well. Toggle UI, we already talked about disabling the UI with F4. You can chat with by pressing enter, and then you hit enter again to send your message. You can open the feedback window with F2. We talked about that as well. You can sit with X by default and ragdoll with G by default. And so it's sitting, obviously you just sit, and you can stand up again by pressing the same X button. And ragdolling doesn't really have a purpose other than you literally ragdolling. So I guess if you would just like to watch your character fall down a hill or something. You do take damage though. I should warn you that you do take damage from falling. So if you ragdoll off the side of a cliff or something and you hit the floor, you will take damage for that. So as far as I know, there's not really a purpose to ragdolling other than to just kind of emote that you're like falling over. And then speaking of emotes, we have the dancing. And so there's 5 dances in total. The way to activate these dances, and then the only way to do it as far as I know, is to hold down left shift and press any button between the number 8 to the equal sign. So you have the first dance is left shift 8. That'll do this dance. Left shift 9 will do this dance. Left shift 0 will do this dance. Left shift minus will do this dance. And then left shift equal sign will do that dance. And so you can do up to 5 dances just to kind of be silly. They're pretty cool. I like them. And then that pretty much covers the general controls. So we'll talk about grappling now. Grappling is definitely the most advanced, I would say, form of movement in the game. You need to master this as soon as possible. Grappling is pretty much the main method of getting around, and if you're not really good at it, you need to get good at it ASAP, because when you're in trouble, when you're in situations where you're fighting somebody or you're running away from somebody, you need to be able to be a master with a grapple hook. So the way we use it, we already discussed, was you click and hold the right mouse button, and that'll let you aim. So you move your mouse around as you're holding right click, and that'll let you aim your grapple hook. And as of course you can see this reticle here in the center of the screen moving around, that's where you're going to grapple. That's the point of contact. And so you can go ahead and release the right mouse button, and that'll release the grapple hook, so you can grapple on. An important thing to note about this reticle, I'll show you here in a second, is basically in order to know whether or not your grapple hook is long enough to make contact with the surface that you're aiming at, you have to see this reticle it will have a circle around it. If you cannot reach the point where you're trying to grapple, then it'll go away and you'll see just the dot there. So I'll show you here. We'll go ahead and climb out of this revival chamber. And we're gonna go ahead and aim forward. You'll see that it's just a white dot. If we try to aim at the space here, obviously we can't shoot it because there's nothing to grapple onto. And so we're just gonna do nothing. We're gonna wave our hand around and not launch anything. A lot of people do this to actually wave hello, like, hey, how you doing? Hey. It's a good trick. So another thing to consider with the targeting reticle is that in some situations, if you're too close to something, it'll inaccurately grapple onto it. And so I'll show you what I mean by that here with a tree. So let's go ahead and swing down. So let's say I want to grab onto that rock over there, right? But I'm behind this this tree. What happens is the reticle will show. You see it right here. Here, it's not going to hit anything. But if I move it here, obviously there's nothing there. But because the tree is right in my way, it's going to grapple onto that tree. So you just want to be careful whenever you're grappling onto different surfaces that you're not going to grapple onto the wrong thing. That's just something to keep in mind. And so the grapple has many mechanics, most important of which is probably going to be swinging and boosting. So boosting is basically this is what boosting is. So you can basically press spacebar to launch yourself towards the point of contact for the grapple hook. And so that's a great trick if you want to move quickly. It's faster than running. It's faster than jumping. It's a great way to cover large distances pretty quickly. So the way you do that is basically you grapple on. You want to be running and reeling in at the same time. Jump with spacebar, and then hit spacebar again at the peak of your jump. So you don't have to be running or reeling in, but it gives you a speed boost, a little one. So it's probably not that big of a difference. I mean, if you're just running and you don't reel in, you might not get that launch. You see how it kind of just, if we're really far away, it kind of just does that empty launch. So you can avoid that by reeling in as you're running. So you just gotta practice that, time it well, and once you get the hang of it, you can move pretty quickly. You can start to really run. What you want to avoid doing is what I just did there, where you land at a weird angle and your character has to do some weird squat. You want to keep smoothly running. So that one was decent because my character kept up his animation for running. But if I do it over here, let's say, and I land at this awkward angle and he does that weird crouch and he stops running, that's gonna kill your momentum, so you don't want to do that. So just practice doing it in a way where you can not only not take damage but also keep your animation for running, like so. And speaking of damage, that's another important thing to know about physics and grappling in this game. So if you land perpendicular to the ground, or at any really sharp angle against the ground, you're going to take damage. And so I'll show you that here real quick. If we swing over and we land on the floor at that perpendicular angle, we're going to take some serious damage there. But what you can do to mitigate that, so that you can still kind of launch yourself relatively far and not take damage, is you have to do it with a slope. So, for example, right here there's a slope. If I launch myself at the angle of the slope, I'm getting all tangled up here. So if I launch myself, let's say it's kind of hard to, this is too close to really show you. Well, let me see if I can reach over there. So that angle, I'm going to try to hit that slope. If I can match the angle of the slope when I launch, I won't take that much damage, if any. Oh, see? So right there, perfect. We matched the angle of the slope, so we slid down, and we didn't take any damage. Even though that was even farther than that other distance, we didn't take damage because we matched the slope of the ground. So basically, it's all physics-based, so you just want to be smooth. See, right here we're going to take damage because we didn't land very smoothly against the floor there. So that trick, you want to get good at that because you're going to be able to move fast, and taking damage is never good because obviously there's so much to lose when you die. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to take damage, and you definitely don't want to die from something as silly as that. So another thing to be really good at with the grapple is being able to launch yourself and aim at a point not the center. So for example here, I can change. Oh well, I tried to do that too slowly. But you saw there how instead of just swinging myself and aiming directly in front of me, you can actually hold down and change the reticle, so you can manipulate where you're going to go. And you want to get good at this because depending on how you control the angles, you can actually gain momentum as you swing, and that just feels great. So for example, right there, I just saved myself by hitting this tree instead of the floor with the grapple. And so if you can get good at grappling quickly off center, then you'll save yourself a lot of stress. So right there, I'll grapple at the center, but then let's say I want to gain momentum in this direction. So you hold down that aiming reticle, and you can change where you're going to grab onto. And so you want to practice that because you want to get good at it, because you can start to build some serious momentum if you can get that going. Because a lot of times it's not best to do it in the center. So yeah, as long as you can get good at that, I would practice that, get good at grappling, get good at gaining momentum, and get good at stopping momentum too. And so for example, if let's say we're swinging around this really quickly, right? We're gaining a lot of momentum, but we don't want to be going this fast because we want to stop. Well, you can literally just let your rope pull you in, and you can also reel out to cut your momentum like that. So let's say I'm falling, right? This is a good example. If you're falling, let's say you're falling from a high distance, and let's say that the distance is you're really close to the floor, right? So let's say I'm falling here. I can grapple on, and then just reel out, and then cut my momentum. So and the reason you want to reel out is because if you are falling and you don't reel out, you will push your momentum all the way forward. So let's say like right here, if I grapple on and I don't reel out, I'm gonna swing all the way forward. See that? And I just let go because I was about to slam into that rock. But if you're falling and you falling like this, and then you grapple on and you just continue to reel out, you can cut your momentum almost in that point. So see how I stopped moving there just by reeling out and then cutting it. So again, this is all just relative physics. So if you can just get good at understanding all that stuff, that's going to be, I think, your number one skill in this game is grappling, because that's just the most used method of travel. So you want to get good at that. Now, let's move on to the basics of running, walking, and jumping. So walking you can only really do by holding the left shift, and this is walking right here. It doesn't normally zoom in like that, but because I have both the run animation, or the run and move forward controls, that's why it does this weird zooming in. But walking normally does not zoom you in. Running, of course, like I said, you would hold down the run button and forward at the same time, but since I've got them both set to W, then I automatically run forward when I'm moving forward. And this is great because you can go ahead and you can actually gain speed by running and jumping at the same time. And I've actually run a little test video where I tested this to make sure that that's absolutely true. And it's about, well, in the distance that I ran and jumped and then just straight ran, running and jumping was about 2 seconds faster than just running. So it is faster. Whether or not it's worth it, though, it's depending on the situation. Because the thing about running and jumping is that you're incredibly visible to other players in the island. And so, for example, let's say I'm standing here, right, and I see a player off in this distance over here. If he's running and jumping, it's going to be super easy to see that, oh, that's a guy running and jumping. If he's just running, I might confuse him for a Thuntomite or something like that, moving really quickly. Speaking of which, you can actually grapple onto those. And this guy's pulling me right now. But yeah, so you want to make sure that if you're running and jumping, do it when you're feeling safe. Either you don't have anything to lose if you get spotted, or you know that there's nobody there on the island, or maybe you're with your crewmates, or maybe you're following somebody that, you know, can help you fight against any threat if they see you jumping. So I would, like, again, it is faster to run and jump, but it's also a lot easier to see you as a player if you're running and jumping. And usually if you're playing by yourself, you don't want to be seen. You want to remain hidden for as long as you can, or for as much as you can. So that's pretty much the basics of running, walking, jumping. We also want to talk about climbing. So climbing is pretty basic. You just walk up to a wall, you press Q. Let's see, this is a steep angle. There we go. And then you just climb. You can climb to the side, you can climb diagonally, you can climb up, you can climb down, anything. The thing about climbing is that it's pretty buggy, so depending on the surface that you're attempting to climb, it might instantly kill you. It's hard to say. So most people generally avoid climbing entirely just because it is so risky. But it's usually safe to climb flat surfaces. Something complicated like this will likely kill you. You know, something with a lot of nooks and crannies and stuff like that. You can also grapple out of climb, or you can climb from grapple. So right now I'm climbing. I can grapple and then get out of climb, or likewise I can be grappling and go into climb. So that's just important, only because you know, depending on certain situations, if you don't want to make noise, this grapple is very loud, and if you're experienced as a player, you can start to really point that out. It's very easy to hear that very distinct sound. And so you're going to know that somebody is next to you or near you if they're grappling. And so if you want to be stealthy, you know that you see somebody and you want to sneak up on them, or maybe you want to hitch a ride on their ship, stow away, not let them know. Climbing is a great way to do that. So sometimes also with climbing, like in this case here with the lip here, if I try to climb this like you just saw, it's not going to work. It's just not gonna. It might work, but most of the time it's gonna push you off. It's just very wacky. So what you can do is you can actually jump out of climb too, and like that. So you just press the space bar while you're climbing up, and you'll jump upwards, like so. And that way you can get on and not make any noise. You don't have to grapple. Again, climbing it's unnecessary, but it's still a cool skill. You can also climb just about any surface. You can climb trees, caves, rocks, bridges. You can climb on bugs and mantas even. And you can also do... Oh, see? There you go. That's a perfect example of how you might die from climbing. So again, you have to just kind of be careful when you're climbing with, weird kind of shapes. If it's flat, though, it's generally safe. Like this surface right here would be perfectly... Well, not perfectly, I shouldn't say that, because there is a chance I might randomly die for no reason here by climbing. But generally, it's pretty safe. We can jump, climb over. What I wanted to show you, though, is that you can also hang while climbing. So, for example, let's say I want to grab onto this surface here, and I go down here. I can hang and then traverse my way around an object. And again, this is just some I think very situational. It can be very useful in specific situations, but I just wanted to let you know that you can do that. All right, let's go ahead and grapple off. And now we can talk about the tools. So number 1 is your salvage tool. Number 2 is repair tool. 3 is shipyard, or shipbuilding tool, I'm sorry. And then number 4 is the scanner. So the salvage tool is exactly as it indicates. It salvages things. So for example, if I want to cut this tree down, you can use the tool to cut down the tree. It cuts the piece off, and then you have to hit the piece again to actually collect it. And so cutting trees is obviously the main way to collect wood. But you can also salvage rocks. In only specific rocks. It's not any rock. You can usually tell because they have cracks in them on the exterior, like this one. And so if you hit it, you can start to peel away at that outer layer, and you can expose these metal nodes. And you want to hit the nodes, because if you hit the center of the rock, like I just did there, it breaks apart, and the nodes will go flying. And so if you're under an island or in a very weird situation, you might not want those nodes to just go flying all over the place. Okay, so let's move on to the repair tool. Repair tool will let you repair any ship part that you've crafted that's damaged. And so we don't have any around here, so I can show you. But let's say that we built a sail out of this material. This I think this is birch. Yeah, this is birch. So let's say we had a sail on the floor, and let's say we were in a battle and it was damaged. We can actually repair it by aiming this tool and then just holding down the repair, and it'll slowly repair by taking up resources, the required resource, slowly over time. And so you have to have the appropriate resource in your inventory or in your belt for it to work. But again, that's really in the shipbuilding part, so we'll cover that in more detail again later on. And same thing with the shipbuilding tool. We can't really use it out here because we need to be in a shipyard with active ship parts. That's the only way to really use the ship tool. So again, we'll cover that in a shipbuilding video. That's gonna be another future episode. And then last, but definitely not least, the most important tool for the beginner is gonna be the scanner tool. And this tool is going to let you scan just about every item in the game. Anything you can look at is going to be something that you can scan. This tree, scanned it. I got 3 knowledge on the bottom left. You see it there. On the bottom right, a description, a tree. And so different trees or I'm sorry, the same trees might be different models of the tree. So for example, I just scanned both of these trees. They're the same tree, but I still got knowledge for scanning both of them because they're slightly different. And so what you want to get in the habit of doing is just scan pretty much everything. Moving on, the last thing I want to talk about is the pistol. And so when you're in danger and you need to defend yourself, whether that's from a human player or an NPC, you can use your gun to defend yourself. And it works exactly how you'd expect. Basically, you're just going to target your reticle at some target, and you're going to left click to shoot. What happens is when you can actually hit something with your bullet, you'll see that it'll change with this circle. So if you can actually hit the object that you're aiming at, it's going to show you that circle. If you're aiming at the sky, obviously there's nothing to hit. Your bullet's not going to hit anything, so it's just a crosshair. Here we go. Thanks, target. See how those, there's like those 4... So, it's a very distinct sound. If I miss, you can almost hear like the squishing of the skin when you make contact. But that's how you know that you've actually landed the hit, with those little spikes that come out on the diagonals of the reticle. And we just got some raw thuntomite meat. We can't eat this the way it is. We have to cook it first. But that will be able to heal us at a faster rate than just the way berries do. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything as far as controls go. I think we've essentially covered just about every major detail. Of course, there's a lot more tips and tricks you can learn. Little things that you can kind of pick up, but that's going to be up to you guys. The more you practice, especially with grappling, the more you practice, the better you're going to be at it. And so you really want to get good at that. Practicing with a pistol would be a good idea to get good at that. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and hopefully I was able to help if you are a new player. And if you guys liked the video, go ahead and click that like button. I would really appreciate that. And feel free to subscribe for more content as well. Until the next time, guys, take care.